It's 3:01 and it's time to go. Welcome to another session of our School of Tea. So brewing tea is also brewing luxury. We're going to talk to you a little bit about a slightly different perspective on luxury inspired by tea. So what is luxury? When you look at hedonism and when you understand Epicureanism, luxury in a very real sense is led by taste, by food and beverage. So when you really consider what constitutes the wonderful memories of special occasions, it is the aromas of that spectacular evening of hospitality that you experienced. And it is the anticipation of magical food. It is the appearance. It's the colors, the taste, and the amazing hues, the variety of hues that you see. And so what does that have to do with tea? Let me explain. Tea has several dimensions to its luxury. And the most important one connects with nature. So when you look at what we've experienced in the past 3 years, it's been a pretty rocky road for most of us. But what we have realized is our appreciation of the value of nature. And tea, being a plant-based natural herb, and its entire process is based on respect for nature. And for us as tea makers, our job is in a very real sense deciphering nature, understanding what the sunshine, the wind, we talked about so many different aspects, what all of this, the climate, all the ambient characteristics in the place where the tea grows, what this has done to the sap, the cell sap, and therefore what it has done to influence the tea that we're going to have. So we're looking at a different perspective on tea this week. And so we have nature, but imagine nature that is fueled by natural goodness. And natural goodness in two dimensions. It's not all the good stuff that we talked about previously when we looked at the School of Tea's Tea and Health with Dr. Tis Amarakon. Have a look at that if you need a refresher. That's from our pre-pandemic sessions. But it's also the elements of luxury. The elements of luxury constitute several. It starts on the eye. It's the appearance. It continues on the nose, the incredible depth and sophistication of the fragrances that constitute tea. And today we'll be looking at our Tea Makers Private Reserve, our most luxurious line. But it's also about sustainability, because remember, tea, it's a natural herb. Yes, the way it was done in years gone by, plantations, not very sustainable, but it is now with agroforestry, with biochar, with all the new methods that agricultural innovation has given us. And so let's have a look at luxury in tea. We are going to be looking at these amazing teas. So last month, we had a chat about the Vata teas. Vata, magnificent in terms of the 4 beautiful key aromatics and the key appearance, the key flavors, and the 4 distinctively different regions, the unique regions of tea in Sri Lanka. So you have here Ranvata. We have Yatavata, complete opposite, earthy, light, bright, citrusy. But today we're going to be looking at something quite different. Now, a lot of people talk about white tea. Let's look at luxury in white tea. So here is Ceylon Silvertips white tea made from a specific cultivar, on our Imbulpitiya estate. It has a soft, downy texture. And this is real white tea. For those who don't know, most white teas are a mix of green, black, and other teas, but we're tea growers, so we can't compromise. So this is pure white tea. And what that produces in the infusion Now, remember in our assessment, for any of you who weren't here last month, our assessment as tea growers is on the eye, the color of the leaf, the color of the liquor. It's on the nose, the aroma of the infusion, but also of the leaf. And finally, only finally, the taste, the third aspect. And so here you have silver tips. It's light. What you see here and what forms the elements of luxury in the Ceylon silver tips is the fact that this tea is grown over a period where it's a specific cultivar where each tea plant and each tea picker is able to harvest maximum of 200 grams each day. Why? Because in order to maintain the delicacy of the liquor, we need to pick by pinching just the base of the leaf, of the bud in this case, not the leaf, because there's no leaves in the Ceylon silver tips. It's just the bud of the two leaves and bud. And what it gives is beautiful aroma. It's elusive. Some might drink it and might say, oh, it's too thin, it's too light. But what it is sophisticated. It has depth, it has aromatics, it has lychee, it has stone fruit, it has a little bit of hay, a little bit of green notes, but ultimately it is beautiful in its clarity. It has a soft, creamy texture. It has the highest antioxidants of any tea because it is the bud only, and the apical bud has maximum amount of antioxidants in all the leaves in the tea plant. So white tea. Now, what makes that particularly luxurious is the fact that it is entirely handmade. So amongst luxury, this stands out. It is what you would call super luxury. Now, let's look at some other teas. Let's look at a pure tea, first of all. So now this is a Lover's Leap Pico. Lover's Leap is a tea that grows beyond Norelia. It's in a region that is, we call the high-grown region. High, not because it's better in quality, not because it's connected with high quality. No, tea is subjective. Low-grown teas are strong and intense, but still just as good, depending on your preference. So high-grown because of the elevation. Beautiful aroma. It has grass, it has herbs, it has citrus, it has a little bit of oakiness, but that beautiful clarity. Look at the brightness in this liquor. Hopefully you can see it. And surpassingly light, surpassingly clean in the infusion. We see a beautiful olive green infusion. It has open leaf suggesting, so it's got to be a light tea, obviously, because it's slightly leafy. So it's a Peco grade. It has the same aromatic, same nose as what we tasted just now. It's a little floral, it's a little fruity, but mostly on the side of lychee and stone fruit and so on, but also beautifully herbaceous. Herbaceous more on the side of citrus. But then let's look at something else. Now, teas with flavor sometimes are considered no by the aficionado. But for us as tea growers, we know better, and soon, hopefully, you're going to know better. The reason is that when you add flavor to tea, and you do it with respect for tea, as any producer, any farmer, any grower does, respecting the ingredient, then you create a harmonious, sophisticated, complex combination. And luxury or fine gastronomy is that combination of flavors and textures on the palate. And when you can craft an experience connected with harmony of flavor on the palate, you have produced an experience that is truly magical. Now, if I were to tell you, most of you know, but if I were to tell those of you who are new to our brew school and school of tea, that Earl Grey is in fact a flavored tea, you may wonder a little bit, or you may not believe me. Well, it's a tradition that goes back over 1,000 years. And it is a combination of bergamot, extract of bergamot. And there are two ways of doing this. You can produce an Earl Grey by taking an ordinary cheap tea and dousing it with flavor, masking the fact that it is a cheap tea, or you can look for an elegant Earl Grey, a bergamot that has that beautiful orange citrus note, a little bit of sweetness, that wonderful citrusy sparkle, and you can combine it with an elegant single region tea. And that's what we've done. So the result is a beautiful tea that is bold. It's fruity in the sense of more fig, heavier brown fruit, brown notes, combined elegantly to complete a wonderful harmonious taste profile with the with this magnificent bergamot and its citrus note, aromatic, floral. It's complex. It's wonderful. So the idea is to respect the ingredients and get that combination. And so the same applies even if we look at our Tea Makers Private Reserve rose and ginger. So here you have almost a cultural phenomenon. Rose, it's the mystery of the Middle East. Ginger, it's Asia, it's tropics, it's healing, it's healthy. So natural ginger, wonderful nose, now completely different, contrasting to the teas we've tried. We tried a white tea with surpassingly light. It's so light that it is almost water tinged with that light, creamy, herbal, citrusy sweetness. And then we went to a high-grown tea. So our Lover's Leap Peco, wonderful, light, bright, little citrusy, a little herbal, but sparkling, absolutely sparkling in its lightness. Almost like, in wine terms, a Chardonnay. Now, we've come to a very different part of Sri Lanka because we are looking at teas that are more intense. We've looked at Earl Grey. Now, to balance this Earl Grey, to respect the ingredients that we are combining, we've looked at the profile of the bergamot. And understanding that the bergamot has its aromatics, its citrus note, its sweetness, we've used a very different tea to any of these. We've used a tea from the Ratnapura region. Now, what is unique about Ratnapura is that, of course, it is unique for many in Sri Lanka because it is a city of gems. And so in this beautiful environment, you have intense sunshine, you have slightly more sandy soils than the soils on which our Lover's Leap Peco is grown. And you have heat, temperatures, very high temperatures. You have maybe 34, 35 degrees during the day. You have a short diurnal range. And you also have humidity. All of that conspire. Remember the influence of nature? The combination of natural factors that produce taste, that influence the cell sap, influence the moisture in the tea, that is what produces taste. Well, that combination of factors produces the boldness and the strength that is required to balance the bergamot. Now, we talked of the ginger and rose scented Dobagastalava. It's an estate, don't try to pronounce it. The rose, sensuous, balanced by a malty tea from the Naolapitia region. Spectacular, but again, respecting the ingredients. Now, what we are doing here is we're combining the cultural context of a Middle Eastern, of an Arabian tradition of rose, combining the ginger that is so valued in countries like Saudi Arabia with our tradition and the art of tea making. So combining all of these produces the luxury, because each of these cups, not only does it take approximately 30 hand-picked tea leaves and buds to produce a cup of tea, but it also takes a tremendous amount of art. It takes the confluence of wind, of sunshine, of humidity, of heat, of soil, and the art of the tea maker, and 1,000 other people on the tea garden to be able to produce your tea. And so that's really important. And if you were to take it further, to understand, there is also a tradition where you have a combination of styles. When you look at an artisanal spice chai as an example. So here we have a chai, and chai is essentially the combination of tea with spice. I know many of you love the powdered milky chai, but that's not for us. A tea grower's chai is this, and you can see in this intensity, so the dark leaf and the strong nose, flecked with cardamom, clove, flecked with anise, indicates that here is a tea with real spice, real spices to produce something much more complex than the powdered milky version. And that it is. Now, they tell me that I'm taking too long, so I'm going to maybe talk about one or two more teas. So we talked about a souchong on the previous occasion. Let's talk about a Darjeeling. Now, this is a tea that's not from Sri Lanka at all. So I think most of you will know a Darjeeling. What makes a Darjeeling special? What makes it special is that it is grown in the foothills of the Himalayas. The mineral composition of the soils in the region are such that it produces a muscatel note. It's very unique. Now take a Darjeeling plant and plant it in Nuwara, and you will get a Nuwara tea. Take a Nuwara tea plant and plant it in Darjeeling, and you're going to get a Darjeeling tea. This is the influence, not only of the soil, but also of the combination of climatic factors, heaven, earth, and finally, the art of the tea maker. These two are grown at approximately the same elevation, broadly similar in color. The Nuwara a little lighter, but generally similar in body, but so vastly different in terms of its flavor and texture and the mouthfeel. So, okay, we've got to move on. So what I want to explain to you is the importance of the aromas. There's two types of appreciation in tea. So typically, how we would appreciate, and appreciating the tea and doing the tea the right way, both in its appreciation and in its preparation, are critical to presenting luxury in tea. So let me talk first about its appreciation. So typically, what we would all do is nice. Salt, bitter, sour, sweet, umami. You have the 5 aspects of the tongue, the 5 receptors in the tongue that would appreciate the tea. It's your mouth that would take in the mouthfeel, that would appreciate the polyphenols, that would take in the texture. But tea and its appreciation requires something more than what we normally talk about, the eye, nose, and palate, because it also needs the brain. And why it needs the brain is that when you sip the tea, you also take in some aromas in through the back of your throat. It's called retronasal olfaction. It's very different to when you sniff. So when you sniff, it's called orthonasal olfaction. It's where you're aerating the olfactory bulb. But then, if you, as a tea aficionado, want to take your tea appreciation to the next level, you would do as we do. So you can sip. That's a nice tea. Slurp and aerate the olfactory bulb through the retronasal olfaction or through the mouth olfaction, and you will then get a much deeper appreciation, which you need when you're going to be pairing your tea with different types of food. Now, the importance of smell is such that I'm sure anybody who's hungry, who walks into a restaurant and smells the aromas, you would understand the importance of smell. Now, that is what conditions the appreciation. So when you are doing your own tea appreciation, It's important to condition on the eye, because when you walk into that same restaurant and you see the plate, imagine if you see a blue steak, it's not going to be very appetizing. You need to see it glistening with its brown, with the caramelization on the top. You need to see the caramelized onions accompanying the parsnips, the carrots, and the glazed vegetables, and so on. And that's what makes the food appetizing, even before you have tasted it. It's no different with tea. On the eye, you get a very good indication of what to expect. And if you're a real tea aficionado, you might even want to take the leaf and offer that to your guest. And then finally, retronasal olfaction. That's the difference. Okay, I'm being told to keep moving, but you know, for a tea maker, tea taster, when you're tasting tea, time is forgotten. So when you look again at the influence of soil and sunshine and all of these different factors, you see it expressed in each tea differently. So here, the white tea, you see the bud. So it's a different, it's from Imbulpite estate, but here you see the process influencing the tea. So being the bud only, a white tea that is grown at low or high elevation is going to invariably give you a very similar characteristic. But when you have black teas, the teas are going to give you incredible variety. Now in this room, we taste 10,000 different teas each week. So the Mahagosthara estate BOP, high elevation, light, surpassingly bright, influenced by wind. So you're getting a touch of a seasonal character coming through. At the same time, take a lower elevation. So I take this from Rilhen estate, intense, bold, quite dark, exactly as it looks. So the difference in those two teas is not the plant, because it's the same plant. It's not the method, because it's the same method. But it is the sunshine. It is the wind in the case of the Mahagosthota, and that's what is bringing out certain brightness. It is the fact that you've got morning sunshine in Mahagosthota. You've got intense sunshine throughout the day in Rilhen estate. And so it's all the combination, the confluence of natural climatic factors, which in wine terms you would call terroir. Now, where does that lead? We talked of a variety. So each estate has its own unique ecosystem, its unique climatic conditions. But it also has, if you consider an estate having 350, 400 hectares, it's going to have 15 to 20 different terroirs. So that aspect of luxury is also in the variety that connects to authenticity, because ultimately luxury is defined by authenticity. Imagine somebody comes along and tells you, hey, this is fake leather. I know I'm all for animal rights, so please pardon me for using that example, but anything fake lacks authenticity. Anything genuine is authentic, and therefore, in this sense, very luxurious. So authenticity is a critical element in luxury. And so the multitude of estates leads to the multitude of different characteristics and different flavors and so on. And what does that mean in our modern lifestyles? We said food and beverage are a critical part of luxury. Well, here's another aspect to it. Tea has a two-dimensional pairing potential with food. We're going to try this. It's a white chocolate brownie. If you want the recipe, let us know. We'll send it across to you, but I'm sure you're going to be able to find a good white chocolate brownie recipe online. So macadamia nuts, the sweetness of the chocolate, the biscuit base. What does that do to the palate? course, it brings in flavor. It's chewy. And it's producing a fatty residue, like most sweets do. Along comes my pairing, which is our Lover's Leap Peco. And what does that do in combination? We talked of the peak of gastronomy being the harmony of flavor on the palate. And that's what this beautiful tea does. In its warmth, it highlights the flavors in the brownie. Through its emulsifying action, it breaks down the flavor. It pushes the chocolate. It brings the sweetness of the chocolate to the fore. It enhances the texture in the biscuit base. And then in the second sip, it completely resets the palate. So what's happening there is that the luxury in taste is being matched by a very unique aspect of tea in terms of wellness. So the tea is first emulsifying the fats, and in doing so, it's highlighting texture. It's bringing out flavors. And on the second occasion, it's completely cleansing the palate by taking away the fats, and it's helping to synthesize the sugars by rebalancing the sugars and spectacularly leaving no residue at all of what I've just eaten. So, which makes the time just right for me to try this other, which is a dark chocolate fudge. Completely different characteristics. It's nutty, it's cocoa, roasted. It's a fudge. So it has a beautiful creamy texture. Truly a match made in heaven. A Somerset Estate BOP from the Dilmah Valley, also a part of the Tea Makers Private Reserve. Amazingly bringing out the texture of the nuts, bringing out the creaminess in the fudge, the roasted note in the chocolate, bringing out the taste and the flavor of the chocolate. You're left with all of that. But remember, half an hour after a meal, you don't want all of that repeating in your mouth. So the second sip, wow, cleansed, and you're ready for the next course, if there is a next course. So tea, incredible on its own, but where it really shows its synergy and its ability to be luxurious is when it is in combination with food. And that's the relevance of tea to our modern lifestyles. So spectacular marriage. 1 + 1 = 5, we would say. Now, we're going to share with you, if you're interested, here are several spectacular marriages of tea and different types of food, and it works even with ice cream, even crossing the temperature divide. So chocolate and tea is amazing, but it also works whether you're looking at papaya with different types of teas, whether you're looking at fruits, salads, nuts, different types of savory. There is a tea, even within this, for every occasion. So a light tea, like our Ceylon Silver Tips, would combine with something very light and delicate. Texture it could be intense in its texture, but it would be light and delicate in its flavor. So it could be something like a lime pie. It could be a simple cheesecake. It could be a Portuguese, the egg tart, this kind of thing. Something that was light, where you would maintain your respect for this tea and balance with the lightness, with a light tea with a light food. And conversely, an intense tea with the intense flavors and intense and strong food. So it's a wellness aspect. And now with wellness, you have a further dimension to luxury, because something that tastes good, smells good, and is good for you, there's nothing to beat that. So some of our tea-inspired pairings, and that's a little detail on some of the teas that I tasted. Now, before we close, a little word on how to make sure that you replicate all of this right if you're going to try it. Remember that flavor in tea is volatile. When I say volatile, I mean it's delicate, it's sensitive. Volatile means that it is sensitive to heat, light, and storage. So when you have a good tea, and these are particularly a fine tea, which is very delicate, it needs to be stored in an airtight container, and it needs to be kept in a cool, dry place. Light causes heat. Heat causes the tea to lose its brightness, because that the brightness, particularly in tea, is sensitive to heat. And so you need to make sure you store it right. But also when you brew, now I'm going to give you a little bit of a demonstration on brewing. Everybody tells me, look, I tell them, look, brew tea at the right temperature. But most people tell me, that's too much of a headache. But let me show you. When you've got a light tea, this is just an example, I'm not going to actually brew. So you take the tea. So that tea has brewed, it's at 94, it's boiled, it's at 94 degrees. All you do is simply take the water and pour it out once. You take it down 5 degrees. Pour it out twice. Take it down another 5 degrees. 3 times. 4 times. Bring it down to around 80 degrees. Around 80 degrees. And you're ready to go. Why? Because each of these teas are delicate. The lighter teas are very delicate. So a Norelia tea, a high-grown tea, this Lover's Leap, this beautiful tea, this magnificent Mahagastota Estate BOP. So don't burn the tea. Don't take the tea straight off the kettle. Don't take the water straight off the kettle onto the tea, because you're going to scald it. You're going to lose the brightness and you're going to lose the aromatics. They're just going to burn off. But also, when you brew, this is how we taste tea. This is a tea maker's a professional tea tasting set. This is where we brew. You see the lid? That's designed to keep in all the aromatics in tea. So use a lid when you're using fine tea, and you will keep all the aromas and the flavors. Now, if you don't, you get a beautiful aroma coming off as your tea is brewing. But that's also the volatiles being lost. It's better to enjoy it in your body than to have the aroma. So storage, brewing temperature, and method, very, very important. Now, typically the temperatures is a guideline. For black tea, for white tea, you would brew for 2 to 3 minutes, but it's extremely delicate, so 70 to 80 degrees. And if you could try brewing at different temperatures if you're not sure, if your teas don't fall into exactly these categories. White tea is the most light. Green tea is also light. Oolong, a little bit more intensity, 80 to 90, 85 maybe if it's a springtime oolong, 80 degrees. If it's a dark oolong, maybe you're going up to 90 degrees. And black tea, 95, preferably 90 to 95. I need to correct that, but definitely not 100, because once you boil, it's 100 degrees. And then once you take it off the boil, typically it'll come down to 94 to 95. Make sure you brew for the right time, because if you don't get the goodness and the taste in the tea. I know some people tell me they like their tea light, so they reduce the brewing time. Not a good idea, because then you lose lots of the goodness that's in tea. Now, if you like any of these teas and you want to check them out yourself, follow the QR code, visit us on our online shop. We are looking forward to seeing you next month. We've got lots of good stuff in store. I know it's hard when I taste and you can't, but the idea is to give you an indication of what these teas could, what tea really has to offer. And luxury in tea is spectacular, but you need to, once you've got a fine tea, you need to store it right, you need to brew it right, and you need to appreciate it right. And that's what this session is about. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of the week. I'll see you next month.